Welcome to another episode of TV Crew Talk. I'm Howie Zales with my guest Charlie Cushing. Charlie is currently the business representative for Local 100, IATSE Local 100 here in New York. Charlie, thanks for coming to the show.
Thanks for having me.
How did you get into the television business?
I grew up in Minot, North Dakota, and I went to college at Full Sail University in Orlando.
Oh, I didn't know you went to Full Sail.
I did, yeah.
Okay.
Graduated in December of 2005. I moved back home to North Dakota, and my dream was to work in sports TV. So I finally figured out who the crewer was in the biggest market close to me, which was Minneapolis, St. Paul, which was 550 miles one way from where I grew up. And I remember I got a call from the crewer saying, hey, do you want to be a utility at a Twins game at the Metrodome? They were doing a show outdoors because it was an indoor stadium.
Okay.
And they had to run about 3,000 feet of cable to get out on the plaza. And I'm like, I'd pay you to be there. What do I have to do?
Right.
So I drove down to the cities. I had family that lived there, so I stayed with them. And throughout that whole summer, the Twins were good, and we were doing these shows a lot. So I just said yes. I never told anybody I was driving. And by that fall, I started doing hockey, basketball, football, anything they wanted to book me for, and grew from being a utility to being an A2. I mixed as an A1 for a hot minute, and that's kind of my career in a nutshell.
Yeah, I have a similar experience. I would tell anyone that would listen that I wanted to work in TV sports, and I was working at a news station, and ESPN needed an extra camera person because someone got sick, and they called our news station, and because I wouldn't shut up about what I wanted to do, they said, yeah, we have the perfect person. And I'll never forget, I got on site, and of course, the eager person I am, first cable I grabbed, I ran backwards. We won't use the expression what you're supposed to do with the cable, but I'll never forget it. We've had a long relation of friendship. So why audio as opposed to any of the other positions?
The school I went to is primarily audio, lighting, communications with some camera stuff. I've done really all of it, to be honest.
Uh-huh.
Whether it was at a cable access station or professionally, I kind of tried it all, and audio was what I was best at, is what I was most interested in, and it was the quickest way for me to move up from being a utility. So it just made sense in that moment,
Besides the WWE tour where we met a long time ago, what other shows have you worked on?
So I started my career June 1st, 2006, and from 06 until basically December of 24, I worked locally in Minnesota doing Minnesota Twins, Wild, Timberwolves, Lynx, United, Vikings, Gophers, really any event that was happening in our market. And it's a good market. We have 6 pro sports and a Big Ten Division I college, so it's a really good market to live in and work in because there's just a lot of work and a lot of opportunities. Not one of those teams shares a venue. They all have their own building, which is crazy. We used to have the Metrodome where three teams shared it, and now none of them share because I think they all hated it so much that they all got their own building. And my career progressed, and I started doing college football for ESPN. I did that for about 10 years. And then in 2015, I started doing some stuff with WWE because I had a friend that was a replay operator, and they were looking for audio people, so I started doing some work for them. And before I knew it, I was traveling all over the world, just like you did for years, all over, certainly the U.S. and Canada, but the last year I was full-time with WWE. We were in Germany, France, Australia, the UK. We were everywhere.
Right, awesome. Now, as your role as a business agent, a business rep for Local 100 now, and my role as an employer for HJZ Productions, where we staff the freelancers of the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut market. How did you get into your role as a business agent, business rep, first in Minneapolis and now in New York?
So when I started in the Twin Cities, it was a non-union market. And one of my coworkers, John Warner, he's an A2, he was working with other people. Actually, Win Bernfeld, he's the longtime president of Local 100. He's still a camera operator. He's one of the best camera operators in the country. Wynn and John were doing NFL football together, and Wynn started talking to John about they had recently organized with the IA, which is short for IATSE, and that it had been really good for him. So John and a group of people started getting involved, and I was really young and I didn't know anything about unions. I didn't know anything about the IA, and I was very suspicious of it. I was worried that there was going to be like a seniority system and I was going to get boxed out. So instead of just saying I hate it and I don't want to be in, I don't want anything to do with it, I said I'm going to get involved with it. So I got involved, and 20 years later, here I am. I helped organize the first local. I'm one of 12 charter members of Local 745, which is our local in Minnesota. We grew it from one jurisdiction to two, so it's Minnesota and Iowa now.
Right.
We grew it from 50 members to soon we'll probably have over 200.
Wow, that's quite an accomplishment.
When we started, we had one contract, and now we have like over 20. There really is no non-union work in the state of Minnesota, and that was just growing it into being a really successful union. So that happened. I started in TV in 2006. We officially organized and got our first contract April 1st of 2009. But really for like 2007 and 2008, it's not easy to form a union in your workplace. No. The laws are complicated and the wheels of government move really slow. So getting to that stage was really a challenge. But from 2009 until 2024, I served on the executive board. And then in 2016, I became the business representative in Minnesota. And throughout that process, met a bunch of different people around the country. One of them was one of the charter members and longtime business rep, vice president, and president of Local 100, which was Greg Calvin. Greg was an A1 in the New York market for 30 plus years.
Right.
And he reached out to me and asked me if I'd be interested in their full-time business rep position about a year ago. And we started talking, and here I am. Definitely not something I ever like wanted to do or was looking for. I'm from the Midwest, but I've been everywhere, so like new areas don't scare me. But it was a new challenge. I've done the Super Bowl, I've done the Final Four, I've done a dozen WrestleManias, I've done some cool shows. Just time for a different challenge. So
now for like the younger people watching or listening that necessarily don't know much about unions, like explain like the benefit, right? Like what's the benefit of belonging to the union and working union shows? Like what can that bring them as opposed to non-union shows?
Yeah, so when my first 3-4 years in the business, we didn't have a union. I was in my early 20s, so a lot of, especially when you're that age, you don't think about retirement or healthcare or even an annual wage increase. You hope that the employers do it every year. Some of them do, a lot of them don't.
Right.
And what we gained by having a union contract was the ability to get some really good healthcare through the union that I didn't have to pay for.
Right.
Previous to having a union, we had to go find our own healthcare on the marketplace, and it's generally very costly, and it's usually not great. The IA health insurance is outstanding.
I think I've had several different health cares in my life, and I think it's the best.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's cheap. It's expensive, but it's really, really good, and you really can't get that level of care for that price anywhere else.
And as a freelancer, if you work the certain amount of days, it's paid for.
Mm-hmm.
That's
in the New York market, we have the highest healthcare contributions in the country. So even if you work a decent clip, you shouldn't have to pay out of pocket for it, but you do have the option to pay out of pocket so you can maintain coverage. We also have 2 retirement benefits. We have a 401k annuity at 6.25%, and we have a pension. So like all 3 of those things are all on top of your wages. So what a contract gives you is it gives you a rule book, really, of like what the employers and the union can or can't do. An example would be if you're a handheld camera operator, the contract requires you to have a utility, which sounds crazy. Like how could a show ever not have a utility with a camera operator? But if you've done this long enough, you've been on a show where you didn't have a utility and you're pulling the cable
It's dangerous.
behind you. It's dangerous for the camera operator. It's dangerous for the athletes in the competitions that you're covering. It's potentially damaging the equipment.
Right.
So our contract says that, and at first you think like, oh, what's the point of this? Until you experience that,
Right.
and it puts some guardrails around, what each side is expected in a workplace. So that's not necessarily economic or money to an employer. Obviously, they have to hire another body,
Right.
but it's what employers and it's what production companies should be doing. So I think the union contract provides stuff like that, but then all those benefits are in addition to your wage. Local 100, along with Local 745 in Minnesota, have never not had a year where we haven't seen a wage increase.
Okay.
The wage increases vary based on economic conditions. 2008, we're in a recession. Employers weren't crazy about giving out wage increases. COVID, obviously, they weren't crazy about giving out large wage increases. Post-COVID, inflation went crazy, so the wage increases were bigger. So that's what the contract provides, and then just access to these benefits. Prior to, unions weren't really a thing in the freelance broadcast industry until
Certainly not when I started.
the early 2000s. 2002 was the first year that the IA chartered a broadcast local, which was in Seattle, Washington.
Okay.
That's kind of the birthplace of IA broadcast.
Right.
And that's really when all this got started, where people could start seeing a 401k and they could look into the future and say, hey, I can put away some money. The employers are putting money in, and you can put in money as
Right.
well. There's a pension that's building. So my generation, and certainly people after me, are going to have the opportunity to retire comfortably when they
Right.
get to that point in their life. Because
No,
before you know it, it happens, and if you didn't plan, it's too late.
Totally. We operate, or it's a difficult business in terms of training the younger generation. There's no, on-the-job training. There's no, you can go to college. You and I both went to schools for specifically our industry. Where do you see how do you see the younger generation coming into our business and the training of them? We run a training school that's more of like a boot camp style, and then we try to, send them to shadow for a while before we actually hire them. But how does the union see the training of the newer generation?
So there's a big shift happening because your generation is entering their
that hurts.
their retirement years. Not soon, but there is a group that's definitely getting to that stage of their career soon. And a lot of those people, if not all of them, are the most talented people in the country. They're really, really good at what they do, but they've worked hard to get to their retired years. Right. But you're losing their experience. You're
Right.
losing their years of being an A1 or a TD or a replay operator. So as the industry ages, and this is true in Local 100, it's true in Local 745, it's true in Texas and California,
Right.
like literally coast to coast, border to border, the industry is aging. And the most
And
talented...
I think COVID really sped that up.
There was an estimate after COVID that about 35% of the industry died, left, or retired and left the business.
Right.
And in smaller markets, like say you're in Memphis, where they only have one pro sport, or you're in San Antonio, where they just have the Spurs. If you lose one A1 or you lose one TD, it can really decimate a crewer's job to be able to fill those positions. So the union's in a challenging spot because there is no training center. There is no truck sitting there empty that we can necessarily put people in
Right.
and help train them. It's been a real challenge for all employers and for the union, and it's ultimately going to require a partnership with all parties to come together and come up with a way to solve this problem. And it's happening. It's happening certainly when there's a need.
Right.
When you have a market where your TD retires and you're like, we got to get somebody tomorrow, then there's some motivation by everybody to find that right person,
Right.
that right fit, which doesn't always happen either. You got to find the right person that fits those roles. The industry is also changing in real time.
Completely.
We're entering a phase, like as we speak, where positions like graphics and scorebox are going to the REMI model,
Right.
and it's really contingent on where the REMI is located. where the Remy studio is located. So there's a big one opening in Denver, and it's going to make a huge impact on a market like Minnesota, where I came from, where there may not be a graphics operator or a scorebox operator in the truck, or some of the tape ops. There's no tape anymore, but that's what it'll always be called. It's the replay department. Some of them are being moved to those Remy facilities. So positions that were once highly in demand the physical location where they work may shift.
Right.
And in some instances, for people to continue working, there may have to be a geographic change for them to be able to continue doing that, or even a career change. Like one of the shifts we saw during COVID was due to social distancing. Having a stage manager in a booth was not possible.
Right.
So they figured out a way to do it with an iPad. And some producers and directors found more efficiency in it, that like it was a more efficient way to do it. Others saw a cost savings.
Right.
So in the post-COVID world, we're seeing less stage managers on shows, and moving into the future, whether or not that position will remain, market by market really varies.
Show by show, or what it is.
Network executives have different priorities for different things. So the business is, I mean, if you and I talk next week, there will be another change.
Right.
The regional sports network model is primarily what the IA operates under. So Yes Network, MSG Network, Fox Sports North, which is now FanDuel North, was Bally. You know,
It's gotten through several name
a
changes.
bunch of different names. 10 years ago, that model was flush with cash, because the only way to consume professional sports really was through the cable bundle. So you had to pay for the cable bundle. And you know, the best way to describe it is 1 million people might pay for cable in the New York market, for example, but only 100,000 of them are watching the Yankees. But Yes Network gets a piece of every subscriber's monthly bill. So it made them flush with cash. There was a lot of money coming in. Advertising revenue was high. Viewership was high. Fast forward to 2025, COVID accelerated what's called cord cutting.
Right.
And it was happening before COVID, but when everybody got unemployed or lost their jobs during COVID, the first thing they did was they got rid of cable because you couldn't afford it.
Right.
And virtually none of them resubscribed when the world came back to normal. So those employers, which is primarily who we deal with, as we speak, are trying to figure out how do we transition from the cable model to more of a streaming model. And that in turn is really affecting the industry, because they're looking for ways to save money.
Right.
They're looking for ways to be more efficient by doing the Remy style of broadcasts. The good news is sports fans they still exist.
There's always going to be sports.
And sports fans are still rabid. I mean, I'm 39 years old. I remember when I started in the business, day games weren't televised.
Right.
And in 2025, that's unthinkable.
Right.
Like the idea that, because remember, there was no replay in most of these sports prior to 5 or 10 years ago. So now today, again, a day game has to be on TV, because you have to see if the home run was truly a home run, or if the guy was out at home plate. So now every game in every sport is televised.
And it's content for these platforms to keep re-airing.
Correct. And if you go back 30, 40 years ago, you know, the Twins were probably only on TV 40 or 50 games a year. Wow. There wasn't 163 games on TV. But today it would be unthinkable for not every single game to be televised for a variety of reasons, replay being one of the big ones.
Right.
You know, that's another area where we've seen growth in the IAs. There's some markets where the replay technicians are now under union contracts, because it's a new thing that came about as an advent of how the sports industry has changed and evolved. Again, that goes to training too, because it's new skills that people have to learn how to do.
Has the union seen any, with the use of AI, has the union seen any job changes, or how has AI affected?
We haven't seen any yet. I mean, it's obvious that there's going to be an impact by it. You hate to speculate too much, but like one of the main technologies at NAB this last April was an AI switcher, where instead of having a TD pushing, you know, camera 2 when they would say take, the director would say ready to take 2, and the switcher would do it on its own. Do I think that that's going to be the wave of the future? On like a New York Yankee game, absolutely not.
Right.
But on a high school game in upstate New York, maybe.
Right.
You know, where you may not be able to find a person that can do that job. You know, AI cameras they already exist. Whether or not they're going to replace a camera operator, like a skilled technician behind a camera, that's to be determined.
Yeah. I mean, I own several PTZ cameras, and they're all AI equipped, where you can set a box to follow, like camera one can follow person number one wherever he or she goes, and without moving without touching a joystick or anything.
Right. There's some nuance to the various skills that I truly believe. I'm not saying someone's not going to try to do it, but a game camera at hockey always seems like one of the like a throwaway, like, oh, whatever, it's game. Well, put an inexperienced operator behind a game camera in a hockey game, and you'll know within 10 seconds, because there's a real skill to knowing, because you got to remember, most of the time, you can't see the puck.
Right.
The puck on the near side is up against the boards, you can't see it. And a skilled camera operator can follow the puck by watching the movement of the players, and at home you don't even realize it, because it's just, there's a good game camera operator.
Well, and from my standpoint, from operating camera for nearly 25 years, mostly handheld, but I did do a lot of hard camera. I would always shoot with my left eye open, because I need to see you need to see outside the viewfinder, and an AI or computer generated robot can't see outside the viewfinder.
Yeah,
if you're looking for certain players, or
it's definitely going to have an impact at some point. We haven't seen it yet. It's coming.
Right.
In what way? I don't know.
Right. Charlie, thanks for being our guest today. I really appreciate it. We look forward to our next episode of TV Crew Talk.